Yeah, my name is Josh Flayhart. Currently work for Motorola right now, and I have a lot of experience with React over the past few years. Built some applications with it, and I guess I think David asked earlier, but show of hands, how many people are like JavaScript developers, or are most of y'all? Okay, so predominantly. I didn't know who I'd be talking to as far as back-end or not. So I personally think it's a really good time to be a JavaScript developer. I'm one myself, where that was kind of like my say JavaScript's my first love, but I'm more full stack now. Grown up in the front-end world, where really JavaScript was mostly shunned, and it's like I was afraid. I was like a closet JS developer, and it's like, now it's like I'm a JS developer. I can do cool things. So we had the easy button there. I thought that was silly, but and everyone knows about React, so I'm not even going to bother talking about React. I really just want to show how React can be used with Next.js, Gatsby, create React app, all these cool things that we have now at our disposal. And so really, I don't know that much Next.js. I mean, I'm new to Next.js probably within a few weeks. I mean, Nathan's here. We work on a code for Beham project, and so I was working on a React stuff with this web GUI, and I read this article thinking, okay, I'm in this job now. We don't focus on React, so I decided to read up on React stuff. It's like I'm probably behind because it's only been 2 months. And so I read this cool article saying, if you haven't, somewhere in it said, if you hadn't heard of Next.js and you call yourself a React developer, then make 2018 the time to do so. And so, of course, at that time I just finished the GUI project, and I said, oh crap, I've got to now refactor everything because I really want to learn Next.js. So, and I'll get into that project later. But it actually wasn't that hard to refactor, so and I'll show you how simple it was using Next.js. So I do kind of want to give a quick overview of the company behind Next.js, Zeit. How many people have heard of Zeit? So, okay. More than I expected, actually, because I hadn't really heard of them that much, but you probably heard of the CEO there. He founded a company, I think, back in 2015. His name's there, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, but he is the creator of like Socket.io and Mongoose and I don't know, all these other projects that I'm sure you've used. Cool guy. I don't know him, but I actually talked to him a little bit just to kind of get an idea of what's next, and I told him I'd do this presentation thing. So kind of get some more information on Zeit and their products. So Zeit means time in German, but I won't give you a history lesson on that. I just think I can get behind this product because of the people who are behind it. The Sergio guy, he's just an engineer that I've been talking with more. I'm actually thinking of like maybe helping with some of the open source stuff next. But their main product is Now, which is a cloud deployment. That's their main product. That's their bread and butter. And then, of course, Next and Package and these other things I'm going to go into are their OSS products. So yeah, I think, back to what I was saying earlier, I think what pleases me about Next is just the people that are behind it. It's a vibrant, helpful community. Everyone's been really accommodating, pleasant to talk to, as far as, the developers at least. not the Slack channel that has all the complaining people, but saying fix bugs. But they really thought, too, they made it, Next at least, they made it so simple, and Now, but they really thought of almost every situation Next could be used. And so on the next slide, this is not even half of their examples that they have on their GitHub Next. And I don't know, has anyone here used Next? So just a couple? Okay. I assume pretty much all of you use React or something at this point, but yeah, this is a great way to kind of get started with Next. Even if you don't know what it is, they have really good documentation on their GitHub account. And we can, if I have time after this, we can pick one of these examples and play with it, because it's, and the cool thing is they, you know, what David was talking about, the Create React app, they incorporate the Create React app and other things as part of the examples. So it's kind of cool. They leverage other technologies that are part of the ecosystem. So I like that. You know, I'm about to make a joke here, probably corny, but like, I guess I just haven't found a situation that is explained documented in one of these examples. So when I was creating this presentation, I like to define life through movies. I'm kind of a movie guy. So it made me think of this classic. So just kind of like, give me a project, any project, and I will show you how it works in Next. And so I don't know if anyone's seen Big Fat Greek Wedding. If you haven't, you should. But that's exactly how it is. I think that's cool. So as far as configuration and setup, I don't even think I have to go into much detail here, because I think I would do a service trying to explain the configuration setup when they make it so easy to do so. I've used it so far in this medium-sized OSS project with Code for Birmingham, and I just have to say that the project and I feel a lot better after moving over to Next.js. Because on this next slide, I mean, it probably took me 30 minutes to refactor. I mean, it's a Node, you know, React app. It probably took me maybe 30 minutes to refactor the project to use Next, where 15 were spent going through this getting started guide. It's on learnnextjs.com, and it's really, I mean, it's just, and if you're a competitive type, you actually get points for, like, you know, getting the questions right. It'll say, you know, what happened when you did this? You know, you weren't listening. Or, you know, they give you points. So it's just, it's fun. It's actually interactive, and I like that. I like hands-on approaches to things. So, so that's, and then in lieu of the, I mean, in light of the config and setup stuff, I will go into this on the next couple of slides. And David already, I'm glad David kind of prepped us for the Webpack stuff, because I was going to say, like, to all of you, I assume there would be more backend developers for some reason, but I was going to say, I was going to warn you, give you a disclaimer of what you're about to see as JavaScript code, but since you're all JS programmers, you're going to know the pain, so I don't know which is worse. But yeah, this is a Webpack config that may or may not have been one of mine before I refactored to use Next. Next.js Next really shields us from this, and we can extend their Webpack config, which is, you know, it's nice. So yeah, I don't want to explain all that, but there's what you don't want, and so that just makes me cry sometimes with how JavaScript makes us do things. It's inherent to JavaScript. That's the problem with Webpack. It tries to do all this stuff with JavaScript, and it gets out of control. It's spaghetti. But yeah, and I can relate to that on so many levels with some of these things. But the Next.js makes that turn into this. And I actually didn't even need this. This is a Next config, next.config, which you don't necessarily need, but it's there if you want to include it. Think of it like a, I don't know, like a .npm-rc file or something. We can override certain things. But the only reason I needed this is because Webpack kind of forced my hand to use some environment variables. But that, I don't know, that's kind of nice. So not this, and then that, but this. So I think I thought that was kind of cool. You know, and of course, like to create React app, you have, you know, React, the web. This is not the config file. You put all that in because you don't need to. The Next comes as a dependency, and you've got the React, the Webpack, loaders, hot module loading, routing, server side, prefetching, everything. That usually would make a really large boilerplate. It's all baked into Next, which is nice. And I've personally always been a minimalist when it comes to, you know, leveraging dependencies. I try not to use as many in a project, and this has just brought me to a whole new level of simplification. So, oh, and I missed something here. The config, this is just for Webpack if you want to extend Webpack. But really what this is for is if you want to customize your build directory name or change source paths, you can do all that in Next.js. I just use the defaults. So I said I was going to kind of get into some of the code, but before I do that, you know, before we get into code, like I was saying, I've joined this Code for Birmingham group. The City Sensor project is where we have implemented this React stuff. And what this project does is it's an IoT project where we use AWS IoT services by registering Pi devices to scan the environment for dust particles and light fractures to determine air quality. So naturally, people demanded we would write a React GUI. I wasn't even sure how we would apply it, but it's like we gotta have React. I don't know why. It's a Pi, you know, IoT, we gotta use it. So being at the Pi 0, which I have set up over there, I hope this works. But it acts as an access point, runs Node, and the GUI needed to be server rendered. In order to do that, for the Pi to serve up the React GUI to register the device on a network. So I'll kill that for a second. And let's see. Let's go here. Oh, okay. Well, before we do that, sorry for jumping around. This is kind of, I'm on the Next.js GitHub documentation page, and I did want to talk about this. Sorry about this, guys. I'll make this happen. Here, okay. You good now? Okay, good. Well, this works. So yeah, this is cool because they have, like I said, they have good documentation, but you really, since you're in universal rendering and everything, hopefully y'all know enough about that, but we don't need to do client-side rendering with React Router. We use Next built-in links and stuff, which actually kind of leverages React Router, but it does the normal server-side rendering on initial load, caches that, and then everything else is client-side loading from there. And they do it all for you. I mean, so it's familiar if you're used to React Router or React Router DOM or whatever, and you know just what to do, and they take care of the rest from there. So what I wanted to do is, I'll get into the code, that's what I wanted to do. So the only reason the package JSON, it's pretty lightweight. I mean, this is all, for a medium-sized project, this is all I need for my dev dependencies. And the only reason I even brought in Webpack again was to extend their Webpack config. So this is, let's go over high-level architecture. So with the Next app, you have the Next config is, I have it under source because it's got hardware Pi stuff involved. So I put the React stuff under source. You have the Next config. Then you've got pages. There are, I wouldn't say they're caveats, but there are some things to know about Next.js that they cover in the documentation. You've got to have a pages directory. You've got to have a static directory. You can use wet next config here to override that, but you've got to have that. I use document here. You don't need this page, but this is kind of like your, in a way, the index.html. And so this is kind of where I put all my headers and HTML, and I did that. It's just because I'm using style components. And so it got a little complex, but I found an example, and no examples to learn how to do this, so it was nice. But I had to create all this extra stuff to, otherwise the server side with the style components, Next will serve up different assets based on what the client, there's a discrepancy, and then it doesn't know how to serve the assets because of the way they're hashed and stuff. So this is why I have to do all that. So that's I was a little annoyed, but that was the only complication I ran into, and it was an example, so it was super easy. To implement, so here are my pages. All I really have is the registration page, which I'll show you in a second. There's really not a lot here that is net. This is all React, so we don't need to look at that. Really where I have the, sorry, I'm trying to talk and think at the same time. Really where Next is used is here. This would be your Express server, which I'm using, but that's all I need to do. It compiles everything into this Next directory right here. So we don't have to look at it. It's kind of like thinking that this is all the Webpack stuff. But really, the server just says, hey, serve everything up using Next. And then since I'm using sockets, Socket.io and Express, I'm able to basically leverage the Next.js app using Express everything. So it's kind of easy. The reason why I'm doing all this on handling routing on server side only, you don't have to do that. I showed you the links earlier, example. You can do that on the client. But it's because for authorization, I have to check the file exists. That's easier to do on the server. So that's nice. You just redirect, and you can see how the register page, it must match the same file name in the structure of pages. Same thing. And then, of course, this is my index, so index.js. So, and then, of course, the fallback for 404. I think that is a really quick and dirty overview of kind of the code. But are there any questions so far that maybe I could delve into deeper in the code? Or no, that's fine.
What's their goal?
Next is goal. Really, Zeit's philosophy is to just make development easier on developers and to make things really easy. And so I think I meant to talk about that earlier, but Next is really to do server-side rendering correctly and to make it really easy to do server-side rendering. If you've ever tried to create a universal progressive web app, just with Node, Express, kind of all the vanilla Node stuff, it can be really difficult. I don't know, that's been my experience at least. Just because of the way you got to serve up the assets, Node doesn't really like serving up. They make it easier now serving up static assets, but this kind of takes all the complexity of, especially with hot module reloading and development and asset serving up and handling all that stuff, caching, etc. Next just does all that out of the box. Does that kind of answer? Yeah,
so it's the real goal is like around, are they truly universal or is it just server-side rendering?
It is for server-side rendered React apps, but it is universal. It creates a universal rendered application.
So like as you hit the page in a DOM, then it will get updated after any state changes. It's not necessarily doing another page request.
Right. I mean, obviously, like with any universal app or server-side rendered app, it hits the server first, because that's the downside with SSR apps is that you have to keep hitting the server every time. This is just hits it once to get everything, server caches it, and it's like, oh, the client knows what to do now. I'm going to let the client it knows what to do, so I'm going to let it do its thing. And then only when it needs to, at that point, and that's just, it hits the server to get more stuff. But
how much of it is rendered on the server versus rendered on the client?
Well, at least with mine, we might look at some examples there, but at least with this one right here, it's going to render it. It's going to render it right here with the redirect, and that is rendered on the server. But then if we look here, I think that's right here. There's this get initial props, and this is context that comes from the server that is then stored that the client React takes over at that point and handles all the files and the routing. I think with this particular one, I'm a little bit more server side heavy, but you know, get page context. I had to override it. So yeah, it's like the Next just knows what it's kind of declarative. You know, I don't have to worry about it. It just works. So it may not be the best to try and explain the inner workings of Next since it's still pretty new to me. But yeah, the page context is where you can control.
You're passing in your state.
Yeah, where you control stuff that comes from the server, and then the client takes it from there. And if anything updates, then you have to hit the server again, but it's pretty fast.
So ideally, right, everything loads on the server first, and your state doesn't have to change on the client side. And only if you have some kind of weird if statement or something that renders differently does it have to reload without a state change on the client side. So hopefully, if you write it well, then it won't have to reload until there's a change or you put something.
Yeah, I mean it's been really fast. I was expecting to be a little bit performance hit, be a little slower with servers rendering apps, but Next it just kind of works. So I need to probably look into the source code there to see what they're doing. That's a good question.
I guess sometimes I find with like that type of setup, it's like, well, we just threw out all the conventions of the single page app out the window just to have, because it's like, well, why not just do something in PHP or do something, you might not have like the web component framework like you get with some of these things, but it's like the advantages that you might have kind of brought us to single page apps, like reaction and speed and performance. Once the kind of drop those.
You don't really drop those because when you have to load on the client side anyway, you have to load the app, you have to load the JavaScript, so and it has to interpret it right on the client side. If you have the difference between what's loaded on the client side and on the server side, you're not really losing performance.
Yeah, it's all client rendered at that point.
It's what?
It's all client side and stuff on that at that point.
Yeah, after you load your first initial JavaScript, everything else is on client side. So we run a universal JavaScript on the fetch job board, just on the job board, but so to make sure that those two things are the same.
Yeah. And again, I'll say like I don't have a ton of experience with server side rendered apps. The only reason I needed this is because it was the only way for a Pi 0 to serve up React. It had to be run with Node. So it's like I need to learn freaking server side rendered apps. Okay. That's kind of how so yeah, it's all pretty new to me, and so that's why I kind of chose Next.js. I didn't have to really think about the stuff that you're probably worried about with server-side rendering.
And even in those cases, like you mentioned, like why not just use PHP or something? Like if you still have the advantage of just like if you're come up on React and that's what you do. I think there's more people in that kind of space that went through like a front end boot camp or something. Like it take weeks to learn PHP, but they can write some React and render on the server. So
yeah, you definitely have feature momentum with React because it has the popularity and stuff. Yeah. But I do sometimes wonder about all of the real use cases around server rendered versus client side rendered. It makes perfect sense, right? If I'm serving up like news content, perfect sense. Like I don't need to, but like for a lot of app stuff, you might not make all this service stuff.
Yeah, SEO, right? So if you want Google to index your stuff, you're probably not going to want to do it on the client side. Google does does full React stuff, I think now, but not well. So for our job board, like that has to be indexed. We had to do rendered server side first.
It comes down to the project type, and I needed server side rendering for deploying since the Pi has to deploy Node. But really, to your point too, like you don't have to do all this that I'm doing since it's more server heavy. Like I could get rid of all these routes and just basically do this, and all it does is it's kind of like it acts as in a sense, it's just a web server. There's no difference than like Nginx. That's what Next.js could be. And then, it serves up static content, and then all the routing is in your pages. And then you just, do something like import, link from Next link, and then you have like router, with router and stuff. So yeah, that's where it's like all of a sudden Next is simply a web server that serves up your client. and it does fault rendering. So you can do that, and that probably, maybe more times than not, you would probably want to do that. But anyway, hopefully that answers what you want to talk about. But so it's nice. You kind of get the best. It's really serial rendering. You get the best of both worlds, and if you need to be heavy on the server, you can. What I was doing while y'all were talking was I got into the Pi. I'm going to run. I've deployed the Next app with React and everything to the Pi. This works. Who knows? While that's happening, I will also run it in my local environment. So what this is doing when I do npm run dev, it runs the implicit build command that we have here. And it builds all the source files, which is all compiled here. And then, because I'm using a custom server, I serve up the server. The server then does everything as it normally would if you're using Express, except it cares about this piece right here. Whether it's dev or not, it serves statics, development environment or not, it serves the assets differently. So that's what's going on when I run it in dev. On the Pi is different because that's in production. So I don't know if it's going to work. I was having issues earlier. If not, I can have a backup. The network might be a little slow on the Pi as well, so could time out. Yeah, so this is running on the Pi over there. Deployed through Webpack. I ain't got time for this. So this is running on. Let's kill that. I was hoping to get it to work on the Pi, but this is running now on my computer in a dev environment. So what we have here is, if this was a Pi device, it would search for networks. So we'd want to search for fetch guest. So it scans environment, and this is all handled on the node piece. And was it talent driven? Yes. Okay. And then we register the device. So what this does is, in Pi world, it's going to download it connects the Pi to a network at this point. And you get the WPA supplicant and all that. So what's happening now is the React piece here is simply this, using socket client, and it is basically subscribing to, and this is dummy data, but ultimately we'd be sending air quality data to AWS IoT, which it is, but so AWS IoT is giving us this information. So yeah, that's pretty much it as far as the app's concerned. But Next just made this super easy to just deploy the node. I wanted to show you some quick, like you do npm run build for to do your production build for Next.js. It sees that I have a override on the Webpack config, and it uses that. The other thing I wanted to show you that I think it's really cool. I mean, you can deploy this to almost any situation, but these guys at Zeit, one of the developers wrote this thing called package, PKG, and so I can do npm run package, and what this does isn't it doesn't deploy like now or Heroku or anything, but it actually compiles your entire React app into a binary executable file. So that's what's happening right now. My laptop's about to take off. But I was going to ship, I actually asked a question because I tried to create an executable on my computer, but it didn't work on the ARMV processor on the Pi. And so the creator got back to me and said, package strips the resources of the project and places only bytecode into the executable. And of course, I can't build from one CPU type to another CPU type, apparently. But yeah, this guy's like Ukrainian, you know, he's probably hacked. He's a good guy, so he's probably hacked some crazy things. But yeah, he was cool talking, like he answered some of my questions and things. So what this has done now, I cleared it. I was going to show the output, but it will. It's gone to the dist directory. And package is also their other open source project. And so really all it is start server. The only reason you see these other files up here is because it's part of my Webpack config for the normal deployment build process. So really all it is start server. You just run it.
So that's
This is the executable. This is everything. This is Node. This is all the Node modules. This is all React. It's just literally that's it, and it's the same app. So, of course, it's like I think it's like a 60 meg. I mean, it's all 60. I mean, it's got every, you know. I was like that's our ticket to deploying the Node, but I mean on the Pi, but CPU types, darn it. So yeah, it works the exact same way. So yeah, it'll work once I get in. But I can, just trust me.
Now, what if you ran package on the
Yes, you can. But have you ever tried to? Well, yeah,
It's going to be really slow.
It's really slow.
And those things are limited. But
So I tried that and it worked, but then it's like this defeats the purpose of being able to just compile on my dev
right,
machine.
now you've got a Pi as part of your build chain.
So I'm like, I don't want to have to check. Yeah, I was like, Fred and I tried to riddle that one out. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. So package is really cool. I mean, you can deploy to a microwave. I mean, it's ridiculous. You could deploy to anything. It's binary, and I could do. So yeah, I don't know about you. That just kind of blew my mind. It was like, and this was like some dude's side project in the company who died. So it was like, yay. It's so cool. I just wanted to find a use case for it. So I think that's pretty much it. I was probably a little jumping around a lot, but again, if there's any questions, or if you want me to show you how I did something, you can ask now. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to John. I said your name and it reminded me of something. So, I was I'm shameless plug for him. So you can actually do something where you have like an npm run export, and I'm not going to run it because it was my fault. I messed up with the code. But you can actually export and generate static assets with Next to like serve into Gatsby, things like that. So kind of like eject. Yeah, thank you guys.
So, for the sake of time, we're at 1:20. I have this listed from noon to 2.